Well, this tape is being made for Andrew Burns, my great-grandson. Today's date is July the 29th, the year 2000. And I'm sitting up here in McDonald, Tennessee with my favorite good-looking Aunt Stella Benton. And she knows the history of that gun, and she's the one that gave it to me. It belonged to my grandfather originally, and he gave it to his son. Well, I'll let Aunt Stella tell you that part. So she'll pick up here and tell Andrew about where the gun came from. And now Aunt Stella is how old?
91.
She's 91 years old and as sharp as a tack. So I'll let her tell you about the gun. Then you'll have more history about it. Might be interesting to you.
My name is Stella Cooper Benton. I married R.M. Benton, one of his sons, Bill Benton. And after we were married, Bill's father gave him a shotgun that he wanted him to have. And in 1949, Bill passed away and left the gun with me. And I had the gun up till about 2 years ago, and I decided that Robert was my favorite nephew, and I would give the gun to Robert to have. And that's what I did. I gave the gun to Robert, and then Robert called me this morning and asked me if it would be all right for him to give the gun to his great-grandson. And I told him whatever he wanted to do would be all right with me. It'd be okay. I didn't care. And we're up here on my front porch now discussing what he's going to do with the gun.
That's right. We decided that I'm going to give it to Andrew. He'll have it when he becomes 18 or 19 or 20 or 21 years old, and maybe when he opens his time capsule box that I've made for him. Of course, the gun's too big to put in the box, but it'll be put up for him. And I want you to tell him about the time the sheriff came up on the hill.
Yeah. Well, this is Stella talking again. When we were married, we lived in the house with Mr. Benton and his wife for almost a little better than a year. And then they moved out. We lived up on a hill down out from East Chattanooga, about 3 miles from East Chattanooga. And in a big house up there, had a big full-size basement and 3 bedrooms downstairs and 3 bedrooms upstairs. And there was a man lived on the farm down below where we did, and he went from a neighbor's house across the field, across the top of the hill where we lived, down in the valley, and picked up a barrel that he was going to kill hogs, and he wanted that barrel to scald a man. And somebody reported to the sheriff and told him that they thought they was making whiskey up on the hill where we lived in the big house. And so the sheriff from Hamilton County came out to our house one night about 12 o'clock of the night and knocked on the door and said it was the sheriff's department. They'd come up there to search the house, that they had been told they was making whiskey up there. And so Bill got up, and I did too, and went into the dining room to the door where they were knocking. And Bill was trembling and shaking. He had the shotgun, and I told him, I said, "Give me that gun." And he handed the gun to me, and the man told us to open the door, and I told him, I said, "I'm not opening that door." And they said, "Well, we've got a search warrant to search the house." And he said, "If you don't open the door," he said, "I'm going to kick the door down." Said, "I'll start kicking the door down." I said, "Well, if you kick the door," I said, "you'll look at the next door a long time before you start kicking it." And I said, and he said, I said, "If you got a search warrant," I said, "push it under the door there." There was a crack under the door from the porch. I said, "Push it under the door there." And they pushed the search warrant under the door, and I seen it was a search warrant, and I told them I opened the door and let them come on in. And they searched in the basement and on the main floor, and then the upstairs, they didn't go up there. And I said, "Well, wait a minute, before you leave, I want you to go upstairs." I said, "I want you to see if everything's all right since you came up here to search. I said, go up there. And they went up there and searched and said they sure was sorry. So when they went back to the main sheriff in Chattanooga, they was telling him about what I said about they'd look at the next door a long time before they started kicking it. and I said that tickled the sheriff down there, and I said he told Mr. Benton that the deputies told him that they wouldn't start kicking that door down because said she'd really shot us said if they had. And I said I certainly would have.
They'd been surprised.
They'd been surprised.
So that's something interesting about the shotgun.
Yeah.
Now, we're not 100% positive that it's the same gun,
No,
but we're pretty sure.
Yeah, that's right. I'm pretty sure.
Pretty sure it's the same gun.
Yeah.
And then my aunt Bertha told me before she died years ago that when the war was over, my grandfather went outside with a shotgun and shot it up in the air celebrating because the war had ended and he wasn't going to have to go into the army.
Yeah.
And I thought, that was in the 40s but then no, I said to myself, that's not right. It was the First World War.
Yeah, right.
So that was way back there in
Yeah.
19 and 19, along in there,
Yeah,
1920,
Yeah.
when that war was happening.
Right.
So this gun could have been
One he shot.
that shotgun too that he fired up in the air celebrating because the war was over and he wasn't going to have to go to the army.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's pretty good.
yeah, that's pretty good.
Pretty good
tale.
story. Yeah. But it's all true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our story about the gun, and hope you enjoy having something from your great grandfather. It's the only thing that I had in my possession that ever belonged to him. I was lucky, really. I felt really lucky that Aunt Stella gave it to me, because there's other people that would really like to have had it too, but she gave it to me.
I had a nephew that wanted the gun, and he came down here to my house one day to borrow it and said he was going to go hunting. So I let him have the gun. He said he'd bring it back. Well, time went on, and I never did hear from him. My gun didn't never come back. And his mother called me one day, and I told him, I said, this was another nephew of Kenneth Benton. And I said, Susie, his mother was Susie. I said, Susie, I said, you tell Kenneth, I said, I want him to bring my gun home. And his mother laughed and said, well, Kenneth thought he'd get to keep it. And I said, well, he won't. I said, that was Bill's gun. And I said, I want him to bring it home. So Kenneth brought my gun home to me, and he laughed and he said, Stella, I thought I'd get to keep it. Said, I didn't think you'd want it back. I said, well, I wanted it back. So I made up my mind that the favorite nephew that I wanted to have was Robert Shipley, so I gave it to Robert.
Well, that's something
And that's
else.
the end of the gun.
Yeah, that's the end of the stories
Story of
on
the
the
gun.
gun.
Right.
Like I said before, I hope you enjoy it and have a
Yes.
wonderful and full life, and just don't get out and try to shoot that old gun
No.
because
It's
it's
dangerous.
so old that it might just blow up in your face.
Right.
So be good and take care of yourself. We love you. Bye-bye.